Elias Cade had learned many things since humanity joined the wider galactic community. But the most important lesson was simple. Never assume. Aliens joked the same way humans did. The diplomatic station Helix Prime floated in silent orbit around a blue-white star, its massive rings glowing softly as ships from dozens of species docked and departed. Inside, the Grand Council chamber was filled with representatives of worlds far older than Earth. Some breathed gas, some clicked and chirped, some communicated through light patterns, and some, like the Virelians, looked almost calm enough to pass for human almost. Elias stood at the human delegation platform, hands relaxed at his sides, posture easy. He was not a soldier or a scientist. He was a cultural liaison, chosen for one reason. Humans talked differently than everyone else. They joked under pressure. They teased when nervous. They smiled when things were uncertain. To many species, that was confusing. To some, it was unsettling. Ambassador Zyra of the Virelian Compact stood opposite him. She was tall, slender, with silver-blue skin and eyes like polished glass. Her movements were slow and precise. Every gesture measured. Virelians valued intention above all else. Words were tools, not toys. The council session had already lasted 6 hours. Debate echoed through the chamber as a trade corridor dispute dragged on. Several elder species pushed to limit human access, arguing that humanity was too young, too unpredictable, too fast. Elias listened, then responded calmly each time, offering compromises, sharing data, and occasionally, when the tension grew too heavy, adding a small joke to ease the air. Most species disliked humor. Zyra did not. Again and again, she spoke in humanity's favor. She pointed out their rapid learning, their reliability in past emergencies, and their strange but effective adaptability. Each time she spoke, Elias noticed something unusual. She was taking political risks for Earth. Finally, one of the older counselors accused her directly. Ambassador Zyra, the towering crystalline delegate, said, its voice resonating like struck glass. Your repeated defense of humanity suggests a personal investment. Is the Virelian Compact seeking a binding alliance? A murmur spread through the chamber. Binding alliances were rare. They carried deep obligations. Zyra did not look away. I am observing compatibility, she replied evenly. Elias felt the tension spike. Humans hated silence in moments like this, so he did what came naturally. With a small smile, he said, well, if this keeps up, people might think you're proposing something serious. A few human aides stiffened. Some aliens tilted their heads in confusion. Elias chuckled lightly and added, if that's the case, I'd accept. He meant it as a joke, a soft one, a way to diffuse pressure. The chamber went silent. Not the uncomfortable human kind of silence. This was the kind that felt heavy, deliberate. Elias slowly realized that none of the alien delegates were reacting the way he expected. No dismissive gestures, no irritation, no confusion. Zyra turned toward him. She stepped closer, her footsteps quiet against the polished floor. When she spoke, her voice was low and steady. Then accept it. The words were simple, calm, final. Elias felt his stomach drop. For a moment, he wondered if the universal translator had malfunctioned. He searched her face for signs of misunderstanding, but there were none. Her eyes held focus, not surprise. Intention, not confusion. Around them, council members began whispering in their native tongues. Some shifted uneasily. Others leaned forward with sudden interest. The crystalline delegate spoke again, slowly. Ambassador Cade, are you acknowledging a Virelian proposal? Elias swallowed. This was bad, very bad. He had studied alien cultures for years, but Virelian internal bonding rituals were classified as advanced diplomacy. They were never casual, never spoken lightly, and never initiated as jokes. He forced himself to breathe. I believe, Elias said carefully. There may have been a cultural mismatch in expectations. Zyra tilted her head slightly. There was no mismatch, she said. You spoke willingness. I responded to it. Her words carried no accusation, only clarity. The human delegation quietly activated emergency communication protocols. Earth Command would already be analyzing the situation. But Elias knew something else too. Backing out now could be worse than moving forward. Varelians viewed withdrawn intent as dishonor. I did not realize, Elias said, choosing each word, that my statement would be interpreted as formal consent. Consent is not interpretation, Zyra replied. It is declaration. You declared. The chamber remained still. Then one of the neutral observers spoke. If the human representative withdraws, it will be recorded as a rejection of trust. That word trust hung in the air. Elias thought of Earth, a planet that had gone from radio signals to starships in a blink of galactic time. A species that stumbled, argued, failed, but always moved forward. Humans said reckless things sometimes. Yes, but they also stood by their words when it mattered. He straightened slightly. I need clarification, he said. What does this proposal require? Zyra's expression softened, just barely. Not ownership, not submission. It is a test of mutual commitment. Action, not ceremony. The other species began to realize something important. This was not a trap. It was a challenge. Elias nodded slowly. Then I will not refuse without understanding. That single sentence caused a shift in the room. Where hesitation had been expected, the human offered engagement. Earth Command responded seconds later. A message scrolled across Elias's implant, brief and direct. If you proceed as humanity. No retreat through excuses. A human answer. Elias met Zyra's gaze. Humanity does not make promises lightly, he said. But when we say yes, we mean it. Zyra inclined her head. That is why I spoke. The council recessed shortly after. The chamber buzzing with speculation. Some believed humanity had just overstepped dangerously. Others suspected a calculated move. Only a few understood the truth. Humans had not planned this. They had simply been themselves. As Elias walked back toward the human quarters, his thoughts raced. What began as teasing had turned into a moment that could reshape humanity's place in the galaxy. Fear pressed at the edges of his mind, but beneath it was something stronger. Resolve. Humans had always lived with uncertainty. They laughed at it. They challenged it. They stepped into it, even when unprepared. And now, because of a single line spoken lightly, the galaxy was about to learn something important. When a human joked about commitment, it was not because they feared it. It was because they were ready to face it. The news spread through Helix Prime, faster than any official announcement. By the time Elias Cade woke from a short, restless sleep cycle, half the station already knew that a human had accepted something no human was supposed to accept. He stood near the wide viewport of the human quarters, watching ships move like slow fireflies against the star. The quiet helped him think, but his thoughts refused to slow down. What had he done? More importantly, what had humanity just stepped into? A soft chime sounded behind him. Enter, Elias said. The door slid open, and Zyra walked in with the same calm presence she always carried. Two Varelian aides waited outside, giving them space. That alone told Elias this meeting mattered. You did not sleep, Zyra said, not as a question. Humans are bad at that when history might be happening, Elias replied. She studied the room, then returned her attention to him. Regret? He shook his head slowly. Concern. There's a difference. Zyra seemed pleased by that answer. She gestured toward the seating area, and they sat facing each other. No guards, no observers, just two representatives of very different worlds. You asked what the proposal requires, she said. Today, you begin to learn. Elias leaned forward. Then please explain it clearly. No assumptions. That is acceptable, Zyra said. The proposal is not marriage, ownership, or command. Many species misunderstand that. It is a declaration that two parties will stand together when tested. Tested how? Elias asked. Zyra's eyes dimmed slightly. a Varelian sign of seriousness. By pressure. By crisis. By choice. She activated a small holoprojector. Images appeared between them. Trade routes, border zones, political alliances. Then, another image formed an unstable system near the edge of controlled space. This region, she said, is failing. Elias frowned. Natural collapse? Political. Zyra replied. A minor species governs it. They are under threat from internal division and external pressure. Most alliances avoid involvement. The cost is high. The reward is uncertain. Elias understood immediately. You want humanity to help. I want to see if humanity will choose to, Zyra corrected. Not because of profit. Not because of command. But because responsibility is needed. Elias exhaled slowly. Humans had done this before on Earth. In space, everywhere they went. Rushing toward problems others avoided. And if we fail? He asked. Then the proposal dissolves without dishonor, Zyra said. But if you refuse to try, it will be remembered. That was the Varelian way. Action mattered more than outcome. Earth Command joined the conversation minutes later through secure channel. Faces appeared, serious but focused. No one shouted. No one panicked. They asked questions. They demanded details. They listened. Finally, one of the senior advisors spoke. This is not a military deployment? No, Elias said. It's stabilization, aid, mediation, support. The advisor nodded. Then we proceed. Just like that, Zyra observed closely. No long debate. No fear-driven delay. Humans discussed risk openly, then accepted it. Why? She asked once the channel closed. Elias smiled faintly. Because if we don't, someone worse might step in. Or no one will. That answer stayed with her. Within hours, a joint task group was assembled. Human engineers, medics, negotiators, and logistics officers boarded transport vessels. No weapons beyond basic defense. No banners. No threats. Other species watched in disbelief. They move too fast, one delegate said. They are reckless, another muttered. Zyra said nothing. The unstable system, called Kareth Drift, was chaos when the humans arrived. Stations were failing. Supplies were uneven. Local leaders distrusted each other. Every previous outside group had tried to control the situation instead of understanding it. Humans did something different. They listened. Elias spent hours talking with local representatives, sometimes saying very little. Human engineers repaired life support systems without demanding immediate payment. Medics treated anyone who needed help, regardless of faction. When a dispute broke out over power distribution, a human technician solved it by rerouting energy manually, crawling through maintenance shafts that other species avoided. This is not efficient, a local leader said. It works, the human replied, hands dirty, smiling. Slowly, tension eased. Zyra observed from orbit at first, studying every report. Humans broke rules constantly, but never the important ones. They respected lives. They respected choices. They took responsibility when things went wrong instead of shifting blame. Then the sabotage began. A rival power, angered by human involvement, triggered failures across the system. Cargo ships lost guidance. A station spun off course. Panic spread like fire. The local leaders froze. Protocols conflicted. No one wanted to be the first to act. Humans acted anyway. Elias coordinated responses across languages and cultures, voice steady even as alarms screamed in the background. Engineers sealed breaches. Pilots guided disabled ships by hand. Medics worked without rest. When one station's gravity failed, Elias personally helped guide civilians into safe zones. He did not check species. He did not ask status. Zyra arrived shortly after, stepping into a scene of controlled chaos. Humans moved everywhere, tired but focused. No fear in their eyes, only urgency. She found Elias in the command center, jacket torn, face marked with exhaustion. You risked much, she said. So did you, by trusting us, he replied. She watched as a human officer admitted a mistake openly, then corrected it without punishment. Another human laughed briefly after a near disaster, then returned to work. You treat failure differently, Zyra observed. We learn from it, Elias said. Blame doesn't fix things. The sabotage was eventually traced and contained. The system stabilized, not perfectly, but enough to survive. The local leaders, once divided, began working together, guided, not controlled, by human support. When the crisis ended, the galaxy noticed. Reports spread, footage circulated, commentary followed. Humans had not dominated, they had helped. Back on Helix Prime, the council reconvened. This time, the atmosphere was different. Curiosity replaced suspicion. Zyra stood before them. The proposal stands, she said. Humanity did not ask what they would gain. They asked what was needed. Eyes turned to Elias. He did not boast. He did not smile. Humans are not perfect, he said simply. But when we say yes, we show up. Silence followed. Not heavy this time, respectful. Somewhere deep in the council chamber, an old assumption cracked. Humans were no longer the reckless newcomers. They were partners. And this was only the beginning. Elias Cade walked through the corridors of Helix Prime with a measured pace, though his mind raced faster than any human or alien could keep up with. The Kareth Drift mission had ended successfully, but the real challenge was just beginning. A success in one unstable system drew attention, not all of it friendly. Zyra had been silent for most of the trip back to the station, observing Elias from a distance. Not judging, exactly, but watching as though weighing every move. Humans were strange to her, not cautious in the same way Varelians were. They acted first, thought later, and somehow, the results always justified themselves. When they entered the human delegation's quarters, Zyra spoke without preamble. You have gained their trust quickly, Elias nodded. Humans usually do. We listen, we act, we keep going. That's all. She tilted her head, studying him. It is not all. There is strategy, discipline, adaptation. Adaptation is just survival with better planning, Elias said. The rest is instinct. She made a small sound, almost like a smile. Perhaps that is why you accepted the proposal so easily. Humans speak lightly of heavy things, yet carry their weight better than most. Elias felt the truth in that. He had spoken the words almost jokingly. But as he acted through the mission, he realized he could not turn back. Humanity did not do half measures when honor was involved. The next morning, the council summoned both Elias and Zyra. The chamber was more crowded than ever, with representatives from dozens of species. Some whispered as humans entered. Others stared openly. Few expected humans to step into a leadership role, especially one born from a casual word spoken in jest. Zyra presented the findings from Kareth Drift. The humans acted without hesitation, coordinating multiple species under extreme pressure. They restored stability where previous interventions failed. They acted not out of control, but out of responsibility. The chamber erupted in quiet murmurs. Several delegates were clearly uncomfortable. A species of insectoid beings clicked and waved their appendages in agitation. A crystalline delegate tilted its head as if unsure how to respond. Ambassador Cade. A deep voice boomed from the back. Your species acts boldly, perhaps recklessly. How can we trust that your interventions are not self-serving? Elias took a breath, calmly stepping forward. We act boldly because hesitation often harms more than action. We have no hidden agenda except to do what is necessary. If we fail trying. That is all humanity promises. Zyra nodded subtly, a small approval. The council listened, some still skeptical, some clearly impressed. Days passed with more missions sent to unstable systems. Each time, humans worked the same way. They adapted, they acted, they coordinated. Their reputation grew, yet it was not all smooth. Rival powers, species jealous of humanity's quick rise, tried to manipulate events. Disinformation campaigns spread, claiming humans interfered for profit or dominance. Some local governments resisted aid at first, fearing humans would claim control. Elias learned to navigate these situations with the same quiet focus. He met resistance not with force, but with intelligence. He explained, demonstrated, and slowly earned trust. One evening, after a long session of negotiations, Zyra approached him. "You carry a heavy burden," she said. "I suppose so," Elias replied. "But humans carry burdens every day. Some just happen to be bigger than others." She paused, then said, "You accepted a proposal that carries responsibility for more than one system. It is not an obligation humans usually face." "Then maybe humans should," Elias said, leaning against the railing overlooking the docking bay. "We say yes because it matters, not because it's easy." The next test came unexpectedly. A station near a critical trade route suffered a sudden systems failure. Panic erupted as ships lost power, communication failed, and supplies threatened to collapse. Zyra immediately contacted Elias. "Your presence is required," she said. "This is a true test." Elias gathered a small human team and boarded a transport. No weapons, no heavy fleets, just skill, coordination, and determination. When they arrived, chaos greeted them. Ships drifted helplessly. Alien crews argued. Supplies floated loose in zero-gravity corridors. Some species froze. Unwilling to act without orders, humans moved immediately. Engineers rerouted power manually. Medics tended to injured crew without regard for species, and logistics teams organized floating supplies into coherent chains. Elias coordinated all of it, sometimes speaking through translators, sometimes letting actions speak louder than words. Hours passed. Systems slowly stabilized. Crew members began trusting humans. Panic shifted to cautious cooperation. Zyra watched from orbit, recording every movement. She had expected humans to act, but not like this. They did not dominate. They did not command. They simply became the solution. Late into the cycle, a secondary failure threatened one of the main stations. An explosive device, hidden by unknown saboteurs, was discovered. Many species panicked. Some called for evacuation. Elias did not hesitate. He assessed the device with human engineers and worked with them to neutralize it, explaining every step to the anxious crews. Communication was clear, calm, and precise. Humans worked methodically and slowly. The threat was removed without injury. By the end of the day, systems were stable. Supplies accounted for. Panic replaced by relief. Zyra arrived in person afterward. "You take risks humans would not admit to," she said. "Perhaps," Elias replied. "But if we don't, someone else will suffer. We act because we can, not because we are fearless." She studied him, her expression unreadable. Then, almost imperceptibly, she inclined her head. Approval. Respect. Recognition of something deeper than words could convey. Word of human success spread throughout the sector. Other species began requesting human assistance, not as overlords, not as conquerors, but as partners. Humans were not feared. They were valued. Elias walked the corridors of Helix Prime again, reflecting on everything that had happened. A simple joke had turned into a declaration into action, and action into recognition. Humans had taken a single word and lived up to it. They had proven that when they said yes, it meant more than agreement. It meant responsibility, courage, and commitment. As he looked out over the stars, Elias realized the truth of what Zyra had seen from the start. Humans spoke lightly. But when the time came, they carried their promises with a weight no other species could match. The galaxy had begun to notice humanity, and this was only the beginning. Elias Cade stood on the observation deck of Helix Prime, staring out at the endless field of stars. The past cycles had been exhausting, yet exhilarating. Humanity had not only survived the trials set before them, they had excelled. The Kareth Drift mission, the stabilization of disputed systems, and the recent sabotage had all been steps along a path that now stretched into the wider galaxy. Humans had been tested, and they had proven themselves. Zyra approached quietly, her steps soft but precise. She did not need to announce her presence. Elias sensed it before he turned. "The council has reconvened," she said, voice calm as ever. "They wish to recognize the efforts of humanity formally." Elias nodded. The attention of dozens of species was not something humans had sought. Yet here it was. "I suppose that means I get to speak again," he said lightly, though the weight of expectation pressed against him. "You may," Zyra replied. "But speak with honesty, not ceremony." The council chamber was filled with representatives from across the sector. Many had come to witness the humans, some curious, others skeptical. When Elias entered, a hush fell over the room, not fear, but anticipation. The humans had already shown courage. Now, the galaxy waited to hear how they understood responsibility. Elias took a deep breath. "Humans are not perfect," he began, voice steady. "We stumble, we argue, we fail. But when we say yes, we follow through. We act not because it is easy, but because it is necessary." He paused, scanning the chamber. Eyes of multiple species studied him, some narrow in skepticism, others wide in interest. A single word spoken lightly can carry weight. We have learned that words, actions, and choices are inseparable. When we commit fully. That is the promise humanity makes. Murmurs moved through the council. Zyra, standing beside him, nodded ever so slightly. She had believed in humanity from the start. But even she could not have anticipated the clarity with which Elias spoke. "Ambassador Cade," said a voice from the back, a leader of a seasoned alien species with scales that shimmered like molten metal. "Your species speaks boldly, but what guarantees that your actions will not falter when stakes rise further?" Elias smiled faintly. "There are no guarantees. No species can promise perfection. But humanity has shown, through action, that we do not abandon responsibility. We do not leave others to suffer when we can intervene. That is our measure." The council seemed to shift. Skepticism remained, but curiosity grew. The actions of humans could no longer be dismissed as reckless. They had demonstrated an instinct to protect, to support, and to coordinate in ways that others struggled to emulate. Days passed as new missions were proposed, each more complex than the last. The stabilization of Kareth Drift had been only a beginning. Trade corridors threatened by piracy required oversight, systems bordering hostile species demanded negotiation, and several planets with failing infrastructures awaited attention. Elias coordinated these efforts with his human team. Engineers, medics, logisticians, and negotiators moved across sectors, following his guidance. He did not command in the traditional sense. Instead, he advised, explained, and trusted his team to act. Humans were effective not because of hierarchy alone, but because they relied on each other, and on their understanding of what must be done. During one particularly tense operation, a neutral planet on the edge of the Dranex system suffered a sudden crisis. Volcanic activity threatened settlements, while political disputes prevented coordinated evacuation. Human engineers worked tirelessly, rerouting energy grids and constructing emergency shelters. Medics organized triage zones. Negotiators calmed local leaders and helped them make collective decisions. Zyra monitored from orbit, recording every movement. She had expected humans to act with courage, but not with the level of synchronization and ingenuity she witnessed. They were improvising solutions, adapting to shifting conditions, and guiding alien populations without commanding them. Humans did not impose, they enabled. One night, Elias and Zyra stood together in the temporary command center overlooking the planet. The emergency had subsided, and calm returned. The humans had saved countless lives, not through advanced weaponry or overwhelming power, but through foresight, persistence, and action. "You carry more than your own burden," Zyra said softly, her gaze on the planet below. Your people are not merely participants, they are anchors. Elias looked at her, understanding the weight of her words. We do not act alone, he said. Every human here stands with others, humans and aliens alike. That is why we can say yes. The following cycle, the council convened again, this time for a formal recognition. Zyra spoke first. The actions of humanity have shown clarity, courage, and responsibility. We recognize that a simple word, spoken in jest or in honesty, can hold immense weight. Humans have lived up to that weight. Elias stepped forward. He did not raise his voice. He did not gesture dramatically. He spoke plainly, firmly. Humanity does not seek domination. We do not act for glory. We act because it is necessary. When we accept responsibility, we carry it fully. That is our promise. That is who we are. Silence followed. Not uncomfortable silence, but respect. Even species previously skeptical of humans now nodded, some slowly, some with subtle acknowledgement. The message was clear. Humans kept their word. When humans said yes, they acted. Weeks passed, and humanity's role in the galaxy became increasingly defined. Other species sought their guidance, not because they feared them, but because humans had shown they could be trusted. Partnerships grew, with humans offering expertise, mediation, and support across sectors. Elias often reflected on the journey. It had begun with a joke, a light word spoken in a council chamber. That single word had become a declaration, a challenge, and ultimately, a standard by which humans would be measured. Zyra joined him one evening on Helix Prime's observation deck. Your people have changed the perception of humanity, she said. They will be remembered not only for their words, but for their actions. Elias looked at the stars. Humans have always acted this way. It just takes the galaxy time to notice. She inclined her head. Then they will remember. And perhaps, one day, the universe will measure promise, not by ceremony, but by the willingness to act when it matters. Elias smiled faintly. That is what it means to be human. As the stars glimmered beyond the viewport, the promise that had begun as a joke solidified into reality. Humanity had said yes, and they had lived up to it. Not as rulers, not as conquerors, but as partners, helpers, and equals. And in the quiet between the stars, one truth remained undeniable. When humans accepted responsibility, they carried it further, faster, and with a commitment no other species could match. The galaxy had learned a lesson it would not soon forget. Elias turned to Zyra. We were tested, he said. She nodded. And you passed. Not just me, he replied. Humanity did. Together, they watched the stars, knowing that this was only the beginning of what humans could accomplish, and that the word of one human, spoken lightly, had reshaped the galaxy in ways no one could have predicted.